Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Google Maps Garage. I'm Paul Saxman, and with me this week is Brendan Kenny.
Hi.
Mr. Google Maps JavaScript extraordinaire. So this week we're going to talk about actually using the Chrome DevTools to actually accelerate Google Map development, which is the reason why we have Brendan on the show this week.
I really like the DevTools.
Yeah, and I've learned a lot of things about DevTools from Brendan myself. Still getting warmed up to the debugger myself, but a lot of other techniques that we use for that I use specifically for tweaking visualizations, and so we're going to cover those a little bit later, and then Brendan's going to cover some more of the kind of getting the map in the appropriate
State that you want it to be in.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll hand off to Brendan to show us the real stuff.
Sure. So I am a big fan of the Chrome DevTools, but I'll just note at the start that a lot of the stuff that I'm going to show here you can do in all the other browser developer tools to some extent. There's always a trade-off between what you can do, but a lot of the major things that they're all pretty similar. But we're going to be showing Chrome DevTools today because they're really good. So what we have here is a Google map, and this is just a direct copy of the map simple example that's in the Maps API v3 examples. It's basically the simplest map that you can throw together that just has a div here, a map canvas div, and throws a map in it, and that's it. And we're just going to start with this to take take a look at what we can do. So if you've never opened up the DevTools, you should. And just get comfortable with it. I've met a lot of developers that just feel slightly uncomfortable getting to know it. It's a new tool. They might not know it that well, and so when they open it up, it's like there's too many options and it's all cluttered and whatever, and it's intimidating. And a lot of getting over that is just using it a lot. So to start up, you come up to the options and down to tools, and open up the developer tools.
Or you can remember that. Extremely
this like
helpful.
Alien language, which is just Command-Shift-I on the Mac, and then Control-Shift-I on. That's not right. What is it?
I think it's left-shift.
It's Option. That's what it is.
Oh,
so it's Command-Option-I, and I guess Control-Alt-I on Windows. I don't know. It's muscle memory. It's in your settings. So when it opens up, down here you have, it starts in the Elements view, and it shows a live view of the DOM of your page and CSS on the right. I don't think we're going to be doing too much in here today, but it's a good place to start, especially if you go back look at our earlier Maps API garages, you can see we gave some tips for my map is not showing up at all. A good place to start is on this screen.
And a quick note about the DOM is that's the effective DOM, right? So
yes.
That's after any DOM transformation.
This is the actual document tree that's live in your document. It might not actually match your HTML if you've done some transformation in JavaScript, or if you've just done bad HTML that's not actually valid. The browser will try and fix it up, and so it might insert elements where you don't expect them. So one thing you can see here is that on these wider screens that are really popular today, there's not a whole lot of room for your DevTools to also be able to see the map. And there is a handy option that used to be kind of buried away, but now is pretty right available up front. If you come down to the bottom left, you can see the undock button, which lets you undock it and have it as a standalone thing, but you're still managing it. Its placement and everything. But there's a very nice new button that just lets you dock it to the right. And that's really handy on these wider screens. As I say, the DOM tree gets a little awkward, but it's useful for our other panels here. So I want to just start and come over to the oh, that's kind of weird. The developer console. So this is a live JavaScript environment that lets you actually interact with the page and anything that's in the page. So if you look at the map simple example, one of the things it does, which is one of the most helpful things you can do, is it leaves the map object at the top level in the global scope. And that lets you actually interact with it on the JavaScript console. When you go in production, maybe you don't want to have that exposed, or you don't want to pollute the namespace or whatever. But during development, it's extremely helpful to be able to go in and actually tweak it. So the example I like to give to just start off here is the classic example of I just want to drop a map in a page and have it positioned to a view that looks good. And so what you can do, if we go back over to our source code.
Oh, we'll quick point out the map in the global scope, what that looks like.
Oh, here?
Yeah, if you're not too familiar with scopes.
So yeah, so you put it here at the top scope, you declare your map, and this makes it a global variable. Sometimes in examples you'll see there's actually, the map is actually declared within the initialize function. And because you're actually adding it to the DOM, it won't get garbage collected even though you no longer have a reference to that variable if you've only declared it inside that function. So the map will go on living like some kind of zombie, but you'll have no way to actually go in there and tweak its need for brains. I don't think that metaphor works, but so here's how, a pretty typical way of declaring a map. You declare your map options object. You then pass it to the Google Maps constructor along with a reference to the HTML element that you want to put the map into. Excuse me. And so what you typically are going to want to have, or what you need, is actually a zoom level to start off with and a lat long center of your map. And so what you can do is sit here and tweak these values like, OK, well, I know that North America is in the Western Hemisphere, and I know that, like, whatever, California is on the left side of the US, and tweak these values and save it and then flip back to your map and refresh. But that's a little bit silly because we can actually interact with this map live. So if I go here into the developer console and type map, I actually get this reference, and it's been closure compiled, so everything's been minified. You got all these short names, and sometimes it's a little bit intimidating. But if you go to the Maps API docs, you can see all the public functions or methods that live on the map object, and you can also see some of them in here. So one thing you can do is say map.getZoom and actually see the current zoom of the map, and it's 8, which is exactly what we started. So let's say we do want to go back here, and we zoom out, and we do want to start on California, just because
that's where we live.
Yeah, we're so California-centric, I guess. So we'll come down here, and then I really want to look at the Moffett Airfield, and I want that to be the center of my map. So I've now positioned this, and I think this is a good view. This is where I want to be. So I can do map.getZoom to see what I've done, rather than keep track of like what zoom level I'm on or whatever. And I can see that I'm on map zoom level 14. And now I want to actually, well, I'll go over here and edit it and make this 14 so I don't forget. OK. So now I switch back, and now I actually want the center of my new map to be this as well. So I can actually say map.getCenter. But one thing you'll see is that you get this object back because getCenter returns a lat long object. And you can see there's really nice variable names here, which is actually great because it keeps JavaScript size low, but it hides it from you. But you can do a really nice thing that it has on it. getCenter dot toString is overridden by the lat long object to give you a nicely formatted lat long string of your object. And now I can just copy that directly, and let's keep all the digits just for fun. I left an extra thing in there.
A lot of digits.
Yeah. So now when I save and I come back over here and I'll zoom out and move the map just so you believe me. Now when I save and refresh, I start exactly on Moffett Field and the center. So it's really simple, and if I'm boring you right now, I apologize. But this is a really good way to just make this sort of thing really easy. And that's kind of the thread throughout all the kind of tips that we're going to show you today, is just that there's lots of ways that you can interact with your map right in the developer console so that you can sit there and live tweak it rather than have to sit there and edit, refresh, and you lose kind of the continuity between kind of the tweaks that you're making and the code that you're actually adjusting. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to show a few more things that you can tweak. OK. So just as a pro tip, just like most terminals or consoles, you can hit the up arrow to get your last entry. So if I hit the up arrow, I can see the last entry that I actually input as input. And so that's going to be really helpful for us if we want to go back to the thing, like if we mess something up, we can go back and check it. And so let's see.
Some map options? Like,
sure. So the map object, if we go back to the constructor here, the map object is constructed with this map options object. So we create this object literal here, this var map options, and we pass all these add all these properties to it, and then we pass that to the map. And the map is constructed with those options. So that's fine. But the map object actually can take map options at any time. You can set options and pass it a whole object full of properties. So you don't have to set things individually if you don't want to. If you want to like change your map completely at the push of a button, you can. So let's take a look at that. If I come back over here and I actually I copy this map options directly from our source code. And I make this
look nice.
all over again. So now I can make this object. and let's call it something else. Let's say new options. And now if I actually check, I actually created a variable called new options, and I can inspect it live and see the center object and what have you. So if I go back up and hit the up arrow twice, I can adjust this. So let's say I really want zoom level 12, and I want my lat long to become just a nicer formatted one. And now you get some benefits, like you'll start getting completion by the DevTools. And so I can actually see when I hit map type ID dot, I can see the options that are available. And in this case, let's switch to satellite. And if I hit Shift Enter, that gives me a line break rather than entering the console, which is handy. So now I have a new options object. And if I check the new options object, it's there. So what I want to do is actually take these options and add it to the map. And so I can do map.setOptions, new options. When I hit Enter, it switches to a totally new place. And this looks like Santa Cruz, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's switched to the satellite maps. And so if I want to switch back, I can just set my new options back to the original thing, and then set map.setOptions, and switch it back to Moffett Field. So that's really handy. So what that means is that you can actually sit there and tweak all the options right there live. So this is even handier than like tweaking something and then refreshing the page even within console, because a lot of these options can be tweaked right at runtime. So I can go down here and hit clear to clear out this mess, or
show the
clear.
Show the zoom, like the min and max zoom, how it actually.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
So a really neat one. So you're actually, when you're passing in these options objects, you're only overriding the ones that you specify. So
right.
So for example, like, well, I mean, default UI is on by default, but for example, like if he didn't specify roadmap and he just set a new lat long center, then it would still stay in the roadmap mode, but just respecify the center. So you can. Right.
So if I do this different zoom and center, but I remove the satellite, it'll move these to Santa Cruz, but not switch to the satellite view, because it uses whatever. If you don't set a new option, it doesn't override what you'd already set.
So it was kind of useful for just kind of trying out different values. Like,
yeah.
A lot of times what I want to do with my map is, like, for me specifically, when I'm like building visualization, I want to like turn off certain UI controls. Like I want to see what it looks like without the D-pad or without the, the map satellite selector, that type of thing. So you can, and also zoom levels are really important, because like with certain visualizations, like the visualization only works at a certain zoom level. Like
right.
Like if you're zoomed too far in, then your information is too dense. If you're zoomed too far out, then maybe your heat map is not showing density properly. So you can do things like directly in here actually set your min and max zoom. And what I find is really cool about this is it actually adjusts the UI controls so dynamically. So can you do that real quick? So like set a just set like a max zoom to.
Sure. So let's see. How do I? So what I'm going to do is actually I hit Shift Enter, and now I'm going to do it right like this. So I was going to combine the two, but why not have them on separate lines? So the console can actually execute multiple lines of JavaScript. It'll just execute the whole chunk of it. And so this is actually two statements. We declare an object, and then we set the options right in one go so that I can sit here and tweak it and not have to hit up and find set options and what have you. So yeah, so I don't care about the center, and I don't care about the satellite. This time I want to do the min zoom. Is that what you want to try?
Sure.
So the min zoom is, yeah, that's right, is, as you said, it sets the limits on the zoom that you can do to, you know, it could be your visualization. It could be like, I want to center on a place, and I don't want you to like zoom out and see the whole world repeating because it's just a total distraction, what have you. So if we set the min zoom, let's see. But we really want to set the max zoom right now.
Sure. Do all of them.
OK, so that's a good point. So let's say we want the min zoom to be 5, and we want the max zoom to be 10. Let's say that. And currently we're at 12, I think. So when we set this option, it will actually zoom us out because we were at 12, and so we've now set a maximum zoom at 10. So it zoomed us out, which is nice. And you can now see that we can't zoom anymore in, and we can't zoom past 5. So that's handy. So yeah, so that's another way, another option that you can sit here and tweak. You know, now I've decided that actually 10 is not sufficient. Let's do 12. And so now I can actually go in 2 more. And well, that's not quite right. Let's do 11, like that. And I've also decided that the default UI, which is one of your favorite ones to get rid of, you know, it's not really necessary here. I don't need a pan tool. I'm not interested in Street View because I need you know, some heat map over it, and I don't want the satellite option because I want a heat map. So I can add one more option here, and it's disable default UI. Is it capital UI?
Yeah.
True. Let's try that. So there we go. So now it's gotten rid of all the controls and looks great. So I want to add this back to my code now, because if I refresh the page, it's all gone. And I can always still hit up and get back the last thing I entered. But I want to actually add this to my code. And so it's actually really simple. You know, all I'm going to do here is copy the options. I could copy the full object, but I want to actually integrate this into my map options object and just copy. And now I need to do some nice formatting. And now if I come over here and refresh the page, you can see that I am centered at Moffett Field, but I'm limited to my zoom level, and the default UI is disabled. So
we lost our zoom controls, but you can add those back in. I mean, there's an option for zoom controls.
Yeah, and you can still do, you know, scrolling and double clicking. So that's one way. You know, there's a couple of different ways. So I have my new options object, and there's a couple of different ways to get it out. Honestly, the easiest one I find is just to copy and paste it. You can also do something like JSON.stringify new options, and this just uses the built-in JSON functionality to turn your object into a string so that you can copy it. The problem is you get all these extra quotes, and I hate those. But some people like those, and so if that's your bag, that's great. Or you know, you can sit there and delete those. I personally prefer to copy it where possible. And actually, so the one final little pro tip is one of the other built-in functions that the DevTools has is I can actually do copy JSON.stringify new options, and that'll actually copy it to the clipboard. And if I came over here and I could paste it, but then I'd have to, you know, fix up whatever. And you can see that the outer ones are at least disabled. So this is at least, you know, actually valid JavaScript, you know, if you consider those extra quotes valid.
It works.
It does execute. That's true. It's just ugly. So I think that's all I'm going to bore people with. And if you want to show even cooler things that you can tweak.
Yeah. So kind of my shtick is actually just working on the visualizations and trying to get a visualization to look right, kind of in the browser as well. So so this is a visualization I've been working on. So this is actually kind of in debug mode. We'll maybe talk about the visualization itself at another point, but essentially it's just building heat maps from images. So what I want to do, so I have a lot of controls in here already. These are custom controls that I put in. I actually did custom styling as well. So I'm going to go to someplace interesting. And
Paris, Texas is more interesting.
yeah. There's actually unfortunately not enough photos. I mean, I think there's like 60 photos, which is more than I would have expected. But so I just have some code here that's actually just going to build a heat map. It's going to drop some polylines or polygons onto the map, and then do some scanning for some photos.
What is the heat map doing? What does it represent?
Oh, this is actually a density of photographs. So I'm going to Picasa, I'm pulling down all the photographs, which include that long information, and then building a heat map out of that. And this kind of subsectoring thing, we'll talk about this at another point, but I don't want to bore people about the unfinished business of this visualization. But yeah, so pulling down, so the subsectoring is actually dealing with, there's a cap on how many photos you can pull down, and it's like 1,000. So I keep zooming in to different levels to pull more information out. Actually, this was a bad place because this just has a ton of photos. It takes a little bit of a while to run. So maybe we'll go to Paris, Texas. We can run this here. And so in terms of DevTools, so there's a couple things that I want to do here. So one is that I have a heat map on here. I may want to tweak the styling of the heat map to make it kind of fit my presentation a little bit better. And the other is I actually have a polygon on here that I put on earlier, and I may actually want to kind of tweak the styling of the polygon to make it fit a little bit better with the styling that I want. So so again, I could go back to my Sublime and actually edit the code, and then go back over to reload the page until I get that that
perfect polygon styling.
Yeah, exactly. So or like I'm really bad like a lot of times that I just want to like tweak the lightness by like 1 or 5 or something like that. So but you can do all this in the Chrome DevTools like we were showing earlier. So one thing that's really interesting. So what I did with this visualization is I have the polygon. Actually, I have an array of polygons. It's in the global scope. I also have the heat map in global scope as well. So I can just go to the you can see I have my heat map here, and I also have the polygons object or array here as well. So I can just pull these guys out. I can see we only have one polygon in here, actually array 9. And so what I can do, oh, that's because I'm on the 0th one. And with that polygon, I can start doing things like set some style options on here. So this works exactly the same way as the oh, thank you. Yeah, works the same way as with the map object. As you whatever options you specified when you created the object are kind of the defaults at this point, and then you can incrementally tweak them. So so what I want to do is let's say fill opacity 0.2. Did that work? Oh, maybe I'm already at 0.2. Let's do 0.8. There we go. So you can see that now with this polygon, I've actually made it a lot more dense, or the opacity a lot higher. So things like so you can do like fill opacity. Basically any property on these. You can do fill color, for example. Colors, since they're hex, they have to be in double quotes. So if you have like complex, polygons, even polylines, markers, they work the same way. You just tweak these in your browser, get them to the point that you think they look right, and then just copy your values back out again. You can also do things like if you want to get rid of it. So I put this kind of handy hide polygons method over here. Basically goes over my array and deletes them all. I could actually call that from the console and actually get rid of it. Let's get it back again. Or what I could do here is I could just say polygon 0 dot set map null. And what set map null, I mean, this works the same with polygons, polylines, and Did I forget something? Thank you, Brendan.
I'm like a spell check.
Yeah, there we go.
Right here.
Yeah, actually, that's one thing that. Oh wait, Polygons.
Well,
now I have actually one more in my collection. So.
It'll give you a clue because it'll actually complete
yeah,
as you go along, or it'll attempt to complete. And if it's not, that means you probably misspelled something.
Yeah, and the trick there is just tab. You know, as it starts to autocomplete, you just tab over and it'll fill in, or you can up arrow, down arrow to select if there's multiple options. So like I said before, so the heat map is the same way. So you actually it works the exact same way as well. I do this quite a bit actually because things like so radius and max intensity.
So you can see it better.
Zoom in.
No, to the map. Yeah.
Oh well, that's the trick. Is I'll.
Oh, good point.
So now what I can do is like if I decrease the radius, so that's going to actually decrease the spread of each data point. So if I'm zoomed out too far and I'm not getting a good heat map, you know, I can do things like increase the radius to actually make the data spread out a little bit more. The problem with that, though, is that as I zoom in, the radius stays constant. So this could be a little bit deceiving, as we were talking about earlier. Is like, what is a heat map? You know, is it, when the data, when you have this actually spread, is it actually, error? Is it?
It represents some kind of
variance,
some kind of area, but often people don't actually know what that area represents. So think about your heat maps before you just make them willy-nilly. They look good though. Yeah. It's an easy way to make your data look good though.
Yeah, and it's actually
just try not to lie.
Totally, and so I mean, really good at showing density. So actually, that's one point about this heat map is like I have these points out here. You can see kind of in the periphery. Actually, that's only one photograph, and it's actually showing some density in my heat map. I may not want that, and the way that you can actually tweak that is using the max intensity. So the max intensity specifies, the maximum density that you'll actually show, and then everything above that is cut off. So let's say for now, I think let's do something higher. So as I increase the max intensity, you can see that actually the lower density points actually kind of fade off the end. So so it's a nice trick for actually, if you don't want to show or if you don't want to make the low density areas prominent, just keep increasing your max intensity. Likewise, the inverse works as well. So if you do actually really want to show that there's some activity in these low dense areas, you can actually decrease the max intensity to something really low. But at that point there, when you have max intensity of 1, that means every point actually, everything has the same density. You see everything is actually peaks at red, which is not very useful. But it
might be. You never know.
Yeah, maybe. I guess it would be.
You never know.
So polygons, polylines, you can style those pretty simply. Heat maps, you can actually tweak those dynamically as well. If you want a marker on your map, it's really, you can do things like create these objects on the fly. I mean, you could even create a heat map object on the fly. If you're using MVC arrays for your heat maps and your polygons and your polylines, actually you can dynamically change your data. I didn't really make an example for that, but let's say I wanted to plot another heat map point on here. I could actually go and could do it, but add that to the interface dynamically as well. Markers. I mean, this is kind of simple stuff, but you could do things like this. New Google dot. So sometimes I do this if I want to, basically building an interface, and I want to actually, see what it looks like with certain components on the map, like polygons, markers. You just add these things dynamically. Oops, I'm trying to talk and think at the same time. It doesn't always work out very well. But what is it? So map, and so you need the map for the. And then what I'll do is just. So this is just going to position a marker on the map for me. And then another fun thing that I like to do with this for draggable true. So this actually makes, now I have 2 actually because I overrid that, but you can just actually add a draggable marker. This is kind of fun too because, like as Brendan pointed out earlier, I could actually go back to this marker and actually get its lat long coordinates out if I really wanted to kind of
If you want to set it in the exact right position that you want.
Yeah, and actually,
back out.
I used this when we were doing the Mars map, because we had these.
Oh yeah.
They had identified on the Street View imagery. They had identified the, or they had named the certain rocks, but they didn't give us the lat long coordinates of the rocks. So so I actually had to take the marker, make it draggable, drop it on the rock, and then get the coordinates back out so I could actually position it for the map. So luckily
they've now released, or since then released, the exact position. So
have they? Okay.
We don't have to fake it anymore or guess.
Oh, we can.
It wasn't a fake. I mean, it was as real as we could get.
Yeah. Maybe we should go back and see how accurate our marker position
that would make it for a really interesting session.
So one last thing that I was going to do real quick is map style. So a map style is another one that you can actually tweak in here. What did I do? So it really helps. So what we generally do with map styling is, you definitely want to use the styled maps wizard. You use the styled maps wizard to get, pretty close to what you want. But then as you start like layering on a user interface, it gets, or actually like your heat maps, a lot of times like, your heat map maybe isn't as intense as you want, so you actually want to decrease the saturation of the map to make the heat map stick out a little more, or maybe like your parks look a little bit dark. Again, you can do all your style tweaking right in the Chrome DevTools. So with that, it's just styles, and you can paste your object in there.
You need to put it in an object.
Oh yeah, I need my object. See, I came from a world of Eclipse where, there we go. So now I just actually set the pre-existing style. Let me just look at like parks, for example. If I go back over here, I can just up arrow, and I can say, let's go to lightness. So I have my parks. I want it -20 now. So you can see that I've set a new style. The parks have actually, got a lot darker. Again, the best way to actually go back, once you've actually tweaked your style to something that you like, we can, ooh, there we go. That's got a little color now. The best way to get it back out is just copy and paste. Take this code, actually, probably even better to use your technique, but yeah, just copy paste back out once you get everything tweaked the way you like it. So the idea is that you instead of actually doing your development in your text editing tool, you actually push a lot of the development into the browser so that you can you kind of view this dynamically, make your tweaks on the fly, and save you a lot of time from alt-tabbing or whatever it is to go between windows.
And if you're doing a lot of development, you can always you can make custom functions explicitly for development. Things like set hue could be a function that you write, and then it actually sets the hue on like 5 different things at once. Your markers, like your map style, your whatever, and it does all these things at once. And that way you can tweak it until you have it right. Maybe pass it off to a designer who's less interested in actually poking around parts of your code or something like that, especially if it's kind of spread out, depending on your development style. And then once they have it, exactly where they want it, you can then go in and copy those values that you've generated back in your source code. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. Other than that, we're not going to cover today. But there's lots of information available out there, lots of screencasts from Paul Irish and the Chrome DevRel team. They do a really good GDL on the DevTools. Things like, maybe it's not all your code that you can really just go in and put things to the global scope. And so you can actually set breakpoints into styling functions so that when it gets there, you can tweak the values live that are going to get passed into the maps object. Or you can actually make changes to the source code in the source panel and then save it to a file on its own. And that's all kind of covered in those videos, and we might cover it in a future session. But for now, we'll leave it at this. This is something really simple that you can start with today. If you've avoided using the DevTools, you should open it up and just start playing in the console, because it's a dead simple thing. There's almost no UI that you need to learn compared to kind of all the ways to step through your code or tweak your CSS. And so it's a great way to get started, and you'll soon find that it makes your workflow so much better and so much faster than especially if you're using like alerts still. And if you are, something's wrong with you. You shouldn't do that.
I'm just getting over console.log.
Yeah, well, console.log is useful. That's a good thing. Just don't alert.
But yeah, I'll second the point about checking out some of the Chrome teams. One we were going to show today was like tweaking CSS styles. They've covered that kind of ad nauseum, I think. So, but yeah, like all these controls, like when we build these kind of map-centric interfaces and we drop our own custom controls, there's no reason you can't tweak these things, tweak the CSS and export it out.
It's all in your DOM.
Using some other techniques that the Chrome team covers. So with that, we will bid adieu. And if you guys have any questions, just post them in the comments, and we'll try to get back to you guys on those. And hope you enjoyed the show. See you in a week.